It's a landmark, first of all. I think, like a lot of places over time, you just take a structure like this is taken for granted. At one point, from what I understand, is there was serious consideration of tearing this building down to make it the land available for parking space. You can imagine the tragedy that would have been.
The arcade has been around for 123 years, and in 2011, it was threatened to be closed down. This is the old arcade, located between Euclid and Superior Avenue in downtown Cleveland. It was one of America's first malls, revolutionizing shopping and catering to the more affluent trade. The arcade opened in May of 1890 and was built by George Smith, who was an architect, and John Eisenman, an engineer. The building was modeled after the Galleria Vittorio Emanuele II in Milan. The arcade has two towers that are 9 stories high, connected by a 5-story atrium. The skylight in the center of the building is 300 feet long, 60 feet wide, and 100 feet high with 1,800 individual glass panes. The arcade cost $875,000, which was a lot of money for the time, and was financed by John D. Rockefeller, Louis Severance, Marcus Hanna, and Charles Brush, and was built for commercial purposes. The arcade was the first indoor shopping mall in the United States and had small, unique stores.
The skylight
Fred McGuire, the Hyatt nighttime hotel concierge, said back in the day the arcade was filled with jewelry shops, antique bookstores, musician studios, and small restaurants.
Mr. Stouffer had a little bake shop down underneath the staircase on the superior side of the building, and from that little mom and pop storefront business grew this great restaurant and frozen food empire, which is family managed, and of course it is now all owned by the Nestle company from Switzerland.
The arcade is commonly known as the Old Arcade, the Cleveland Arcade, and Cleveland's Crystal Palace, and it has been a landmark for over 100 years. It was the first Cleveland building in 1965 to be added to the National Register of Historic Places. In 1895, the arcade hosted the National Republican League Convention, and it was one of the grandest events in Cleveland's history. That year, William McKinley was nominated as the Republican candidate.
William McKinley, who was presidential hopeful, Ohio was a very, very strong Republican state at the time, and Cleveland politics, for that matter, was pretty much dominated by the Republican Party. McKinley was a presidential contender, and certainly he had probably some influence about bringing that convention here.
The arcade was built with iron, but after a 1939 renovation, the staircases on both the Superior and Euclid side were redone, and the Euclid staircase went from an Art Nouveau staircase to Art Deco.
All of the Art Deco brass was a product of the Art Deco period. There was no brass in here when George Smith and John Eisenman built the building. The material at the time was iron, and you can see in the building now all of the iron work. It's almost like a continuous frieze that goes around the building, and all of that, what has been done is it used to be black.
In 1999, the arcade was closed for a $60 million restoration project and reopened in May 2001. The renovations included the bronze wash, the Cleveland Hyatt Regency Hotel, the fixing of a few structural issues, and the skylight restoration. A bronze wash was used to blend in with the brass work, creating a subtle contrast. The Hyatt Regency Hotel was a new addition to the restoration project when they gutted 3 levels in the atrium, and the 2 towers created the 295-room hotel. Some structural issues were also fixed in the restoration project when a drain backed up and it needed to be replaced. The skylight was also completely changed because the glass was not holding up against the elements.
The skylight had deteriorated so much over the years from air pollution and just inattentive maintenance that it was pretty much shot. And so what they had to do was build an entire new skylight. And the company that built the original skylight, the Detroit Bridge Company, is still in business. So they were approached and they had all of the old specs and everything for what they had done back in the late 19th century. And they could use that as a building block, if you will, to build the new skylight.
The replaced skylight glass is different because it emits a bluish-gray, cooler light instead of a darker, warmer light that was used in the original building of the arcade. 44 griffins that surround the top of the arcade and 6 repeating designs originally burned gas and were used for lighting. Now the griffins are illuminated with electric light bulbs.
The arcade is a unique design because it's really in 3 pieces that's all incorporated into one building. And the arcade is the centerpiece of it, and it connects 2 office towers or office blocks, if you will, on either end, on the Superior Avenue side and the Euclid Avenue side.
The arcade was not torn down because the Skyline International Development Incorporated, a Canadian hotel and resort company, bought the historic arcade for under $7.7 million, which was the minimum bid required at the foreclosure auction. To this day, the arcade remains an important asset in the city of Cleveland.
Because it was such an innovative structure at the time, a lot of people say that the Architectural was the first enclosed shopping mall.